What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Two-Wheeled Rider YouTube channel. My name is Mario Orsini, and in today's video, I'm going to give you a route breakdown, a cost breakdown, where we stayed, all that fun stuff on my sister's and my most recent motorcycle trip to Deadhorse, Alaska. All right, so before we get started, if you go down into the description, there's a link to a Google Drive where you guys are going to have full access to all sorts of files. I'm giving you all of my GPX files for the routes we took. I'm giving you write-ups on all the hotels we stayed at, and I've given you a line-by-line cost breakdown of everything: fuel, entry fees, hotels, you name it. Everything's there. There's pie charts. There's all sorts of cool stuff. The only thing I didn't do was do a price per gallon or price per liter. You will see some of that on the fuel. Unfortunately, I misplaced a couple of the receipts, so I couldn't give a full breakdown of like U.S. versus Canada, that sort of thing. But otherwise, it's pretty cool. Also, elephant in the room. Every other motorcycle trip I've ridden from here to wherever and back, with the exception of, you know, going over and riding in Europe or riding in Central America. Didn't do that this time. We actually trailered the bikes out to my buddy's place in Montana for a few reasons. One, I've ridden through the god-awful Midwest numerous times. Two, we were able to power through much quicker in the truck and trailer. And three, I was concerned about doing a tire change. Doing the math on the tires we ran, I think we probably would have been okay. But we were just able to cover a lot more ground a lot faster. I think both of us would have preferred to ride all the way out, but that ride back from Montana back to the house in the truck was all right. Also, speaking of the bikes, there's going to be a whole debrief video on the bikes of how they did. So let's get started kind of on the route. Day one, got out to my buddy's place in Whitefish, just rode to Kalispell, which is like 30 miles away or whatever. Stayed at a Spring Hill Suite Marriott. It was free. Those of you who haven't watched my hotel hack video, you should check that out. I'll link it up here. Had we had to pay for it, it would have been $543, so kind of expensive. We used Marriott, or I used my Marriott rewards points. Next day we got up, we rode from Kalispell to Banff. We were supposed to go from, and if you see me looking down, I'm cheating off my laptop here. We were supposed to ride through West Glacier to East Glacier and going to the Sun Road. Apparently you need a reservation to do that, so we literally rode around the park instead, just got up to Banff a little bit early. By the way, you can enter the east entrance and ride to the west entrance. You don't need a reservation, so obviously, we ended up doing that on the way home. But got up to Banff, stayed at a really new hotel, also a Marriott property called Moxie. It's only been open for about 3 months. Really cool. Check the write-up on that. That one was also free because of Marriott points. Would have been $488. Banff's not cheap. Restaurant we ate at, and you can see it. It'll be on, I think it's called Lupo, Italian place downtown. Really good place. Suggest checking that out if you're into Italian food. Next day, we rode from Banff to Grand Prairie. That was 439 miles. Stayed at a 4 Point Sheridan, which is a Marriott property, free. So had we had to pay for that one, it was only $149 US. Everything's US dollars, by the way. We also got the room upgraded. Weren't a whole lot of places to like walk to, like real close by, but overall good stay there. Next day, we rode up to Mooncho Lake. That was 531 miles. Stayed at Northern Rockies Lodge. That was about twice the price as it was last time, though this time I stayed in a cabin versus the lodge. It was what was available, so it was $223. You're going to have to eat there unless you bring food with you. There's nothing around there. It's very remote. Had dinner there that night. That was free. Shout out to my buddy Jim Tracta. He picked up the bill that night. He was also on his way up. We weren't technically riding together, but we were out on the road together. It was my birthday that night, so appreciate that. Next day, we rode up to Whitehorse, 446 miles. We stayed at a Quality Inn. It used to be a Days Inn, and I know because last time I did a write-up on the Days Inn about how I thought it was sketchy, they fooled me. I wanted to stay at the Best Western that night, just wasn't available. Honestly, they've upgraded the rooms to the Quality Inn, and if it was that poor, I wouldn't have stayed there when we came back through. So there's a cool little eatery behind it. I want to say it was called Big Bear. It's literally right behind it. Bar, eatery, good food there. Check that out if you stay there. Also, Walmart's walking distance. There's a hardware store across the street. There's stuff close by you can get to. Next day, we rode roughly 602 miles up to Fairbanks, where we stayed at a Spring Hill Suite, free of charge. Had we had to pay for that, that one was not cheap. What was that? That was $400. Nice place. Stuff's walking distance because you're staying downtown. We ate at Salty's on 2nd. Really cool bar in there. Suggest checking that out if you're in town and it's close by for you. I mean, Fairbanks isn't that big, so it should be close by. The next day, we rode up to Coldfoot. So that was about 260 miles. Stayed at Coldfoot Camp. You're just going to have to watch the video series. That is an experience in and of itself. That was $250 to stay there. And that was for 2 twin beds. Hotels, we're going to say hotel in quotation mark. Listen, I'm not making fun of the place. Slept great. Food was awesome. Hospitality was great. You get to drink at the northernmost saloon if you want to. We had a couple of beers there. Yeah. Next day, we rode up to Deadhorse, roughly 240, Deadhorse or Prudhoe Bay, whatever you want to call it, roughly 240 miles. We stayed at the Aurora Hotel, $350. That did include your meals, though. Check the write-up on that, and there's just not a whole lot of options up there. And your meals have to be included because there's no restaurants in town. So you'll end up staying at a camp, whether it's Deadhorse Camp or I can't remember, Brooks, I think, is one of them. Just check them out. Make sure you schedule these things in advance, though. Otherwise, you take the chance of not having a place to sleep that night. Next day, I wanted to get back to civilization or as close to it as we could, so we rode all the way back to Fairbanks, which was basically 500 miles. Stayed at the Spring Hill Suite. Free Marriott points. Should have been $400. Next day, we rode 432 miles across top of the world highway. Super cool. Took the ferry into Dawson City, and our mileage was a little high that day because I missed a turn, had to turn around, but it should have been probably about 400 miles. That one was, I'm trying to find it here. That was, it wasn't that bad. We stayed at a Westmark. It was $121. Pretty fair price, especially since, we'd spent $600 on 2 hotel rooms, a few nights before that were not 5-star accommodations for sure. Then we rode back down to Whitehorse. That was 337 miles. Like I said, we stayed at that Quality Inn again. It was free this time because I realized I also had a Choice Rewards account. It should have been, whatever it was before. I think it was $169. Instead, it was $0. Next night, we stayed in Fort Nelson at the Motel 6. I don't know how this worked out. Literally 6 years to the exact day that I stayed at that same Motel 6 before. Price was dirt cheap. I think it was it's on the sheet. I think it was like $77. It went up $8.99 from 6 years ago. So, and the room was nice. And Boston Pizza was right next door. We were able to walk over there and get something to eat. Next day, we rode back to Grand Prairie. I couldn't use points at either. There's 2 Marriott properties in town. There's the Delta Hotels, and then there's the 4 Points that we stayed at. I couldn't use points at either one of them. I decided to go with the Delta because it looked like there were things a little bit closer, which there were. That was not cheap, though. That was $212.66 for the night. It is what it is. The hotel was nice, though. Like I said, 369 miles that day. The next day was 472 to Calgary. Stayed at the Sandman. Stayed at that Sandman 6 years ago. It's on the west side of town. That went up. I think last time it was like $100. This time it was $213. We specifically chose that hotel though because it's right across. It's walking distance to Olympic Park, and we wanted to do the downhill karting, which we did. Super awesome. So no complaints there. And then the next day we rode south, entered Glacier National on the east side, rode to the west side, and then went back to Whitefish and, put the bikes in the trailer and hit the road. So that was a 285-mile day. So total cost, and I'm just going to do it for the motorcycle trip, though if you get to the hotels one, there is a tab there, or you get to the cost one, there's a tab just for hotels. It shows you all the hotels we stayed at on the entire trip if you want to take a look at that. I basically had to come up with that because my sister and I are splitting the hotel cost. But the total cost was $3,810.36. So let me go into a little bit of a breakdown on that. So fuel. Now I'm giving you guys my cost, which is my fuel cost, my food cost, which probably has, I probably picked up my sister's tab a couple of times. We kind of did that back and forth, so it's not perfect. It's got the total hotel cost, because I'm figuring if you went solo, like still need a room, it's going to cost you the same. And then I'll go down through the rest of the stuff. Entry fees. You're going to see the total entry fee on these sheets, and some of them that are highlighted. If they're highlighted yellow, it just means it was a hotel. Or if you saw it as like entry fee or something, it just, when I put the entry fees over on the other side, it was just for me or just for one person. So if you do a total of the amount on here, it's going to be a little bit different than the total over on the right-hand side with the breakdown, and that's why. I didn't break up the hotel cost individually, but I did break up the entry fee cost. So fuel was $822.67. Food was $955.38. Hotels, the biggest cost, $1,558.61. Souvenirs, at least for me, $75.11. Miscellaneous, $193.12. And I'll be honest, the overwhelming majority of that is I had a hard drive fail on me on this trip. Now it's going to get replaced for free, but I'm shooting a ton of footage and I back up everything onto 2 hard drives. So I walked over to Walmart one night, got another hard drive, which I think was around $100, $120, whatever. And then I had to get an adapter to work with my computer, all this sort of thing, because I wanted to back up that footage. So that's why that miscellaneous is a little high. Otherwise, it included like just random things. I also like a trip to a hardware store, like I needed some screws, stuff like that. Entry fees were $166.89. That was really the Arctic Ocean trip, Glacier National, getting into Banff. I'm sure there's a couple other little things. And then Uber rides were $65.78. That was just in Fairbanks. We needed to make a couple of Walmart runs for a couple of things on the trip. It's just easier to do Uber than hopping back on the bikes. So again, it was actually, I might have given you guys the wrong total. I did, because I missed something on the other sheet. So I was off by $27. It was $3,837.56. Here's where it gets really interesting. If I wouldn't have had those Marriott points, it would have been $5,986.96. Now, you could make the argument that if I didn't have the Marriott points, I probably wouldn't have stayed at Marriott properties, and I would have stayed at more like Super 8s and Quality Inns along the way. Fair argument to make, but wow, what a difference. And let me give you this. So I also did an average out of like, hey, when we were in the truck versus we were on the bikes, what was the average hotel cost per night? The average cost was $115, and it only varied by 30 cents versus in the U.S. traveling across versus Canada and Alaska. It came out to be the same. So we'll call it $115.50. If I wouldn't have had points, it would have been $265. It's just ridiculous. For comparison purposes, if we go back and look at 2018, $93 or $92.98, however you want to look at it. Again, I was staying at lesser places back then. I guess my tastes have changed a little bit now, but $93 versus $260-some, huge difference. Again, I'm sorry I can't give like an exact breakdown on fuel costs and how that worked out. But anyway, that's just kind of the breakdown of the trip. So if you guys want to go check out the GPX files, they're down there. You use them however you see fit. There's a 4-page document with like all the hotels, their addresses, what the price was. And I put like the actual price had I stayed there, not that whatever. And then in the thoughts, I'll just put a couple of key things in there, like there was a restaurant nearby I liked or what I thought of the room, like that sort of deal. And then there's a price breakdown of everything. It'll show you day by day, dollar by dollar. It's all in U.S. dollars. The conversion's already been made. So just go back, just one more thing. Like hotels made up 40.6% of the cost. Food was 29.4. Fuel was 21.4. Or Uber rides 1.7, entry fees 4.3, miscellaneous 5%, souvenirs 2.5. So anyway, listen, I'm not going to make this trip every 6 years just to share the information, but I wanted to share it. You know, I've talked to folks that used the files from years ago that are still using them today, and I thought maybe they'd be beneficial to you. So they're all out there for you. Use them however you see fit. And anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, considering that subscribe button, because if you like motorcycles, well, this is the place to be. If you have any questions after looking at all this data, watching the video, whatever, let me know down in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer them. And as always, I'll talk to you again soon.